Hi everyone, my name is Dries Vervoort. I will be presenting today's webinar, KeyShot 6 uh, animation, the first one in a series of 3 webinars. Today I'll be covering animation in general, how we work with animations in KeyShot, and how we go about setting up and manipulating part animations. So without further ado, I suggest we get started. Seems like our attendee list is filling up nicely. So I'd like to point out that since KeyShot 6, animation is a KeyShot Pro feature. So there's a header small section we have, which is actually due to be updated very soon with some updated content and information. So KeyShot animation is part of Pro, which means that you can get KeyShot animation as a part of KeyShot Pro, Pro Floating, and KeyShot Enterprise. I would like to point out that the animation features inside KeyShot are geared towards product presentations, so it's an easy to use system for fast creation of product animations. Product animations, for instance, could be exploded views, as is showcased in this image, turntables. Animations can be used to show the general working principles of a product and to tell basically the story of your product. For today's webinar, we'll be working with a SolidWorks model that I downloaded from GrabCAD, and it's this lovely little Lego truck. So we'll be using this model to highlight some of the part animation features in KeyShot today. I have imported this model in SolidWorks. So I'm just going to give a quick rundown of how this model was set up. And as I downloaded the model, it was basically one assembly with all the parts into the main assembly. I would like to mention that it's actually before you do the import or the before you do the import in KeyShot or the export to KeyShot with the use of our plugins, that it's a good idea to think about the structure and the hierarchy of your model and sub-assemblies before doing any work on animations. The reason being that it's often easier to work with animations and rotation animations specifically if you have a proper structure of parts into sub-assemblies in your model. So if we take a look at the bottom of this model, we can animate, for instance, this wheel so that it rotates left or right. But as these parts should all move along, it's actually a good idea to put them into a group of parts. So I spent some time optimizing the structure of this model, and I ended up with this new assembly. As you can see here on the left side, I have made some sub-assemblies for the different static and moving parts of this model. I have put the chassis into a single sub-assembly. So these are the parts that should not move. And then to further aid my organization, I also put the cabin into a subassembly, the crane that is mounted on the back, the rails, the knob that is used to steer the wheels, the crank that is used to drive the axles of these front wheels, the rear axle, and these front wheel axles themselves. I also put the wheels into individual assemblies. So for each wheel I have one assembly. And even though this is a SolidWorks model and I have SolidWorks uses the concept as any other CAD, mechanical CAD tool of subassemblies, it's actually applicable to any modeling tool. So even if you're working with a polygon modeler, the same principles apply. It's always a good idea if you're planning to do animations to have some structure in your model. Furthermore, as I will be applying rotation animations, I ensured to use as much as possible origins that are coincident with the pivots that I want to use for my rotation animations, which means that, for instance, for this axle part, if I select the origin, you will notice that it sits exactly where my rotation is supposed to be pivoting around. I will show you the importance or the significance of this as we work with this model in KeyShot. So this is just a quick heads up on the setup I did for the model before importing it into KeyShot. So here's a model that I already animated, and just to give you an overview of what we will be working on today. So I will have a look at my lighting tab for my render settings, and by default this is set to basic to speed up the performance for this presentation. I will switch off self shadows because we're going to focus on part translations and rotations and not so much on material appearance today. So I will play back this animation. So the car comes driving in, some parts fade out, there is a rotation animation applied to the steering. So this is what we will be recreating in today's session. So I will load the original model. So here I made an import from the SolidWorks model. I used a regular import and then pointed it towards the SolidWorks assembly. Again, to speed up rendering, I can hit the S key, which will turn off self shadows. So this is the default layout you probably have when you start KeyShot. Animations are applied through the scene tree and the animation timeline. The scene tree is located in the scene tab of the project window. The animation window can be invoked by hitting the A key. This will bring up the timeline. The timeline can be docked and undocked. Double-clicking the window docks it by default at the bottom of the KeyShot screen. A good approach for maximizing your screen space when working with animations is to hit the M key. This will hide the material library, so you can focus on setting up your animations. So if we have a look at the timeline itself, we have the animation wizard, which is basically the starting point to setting up and configuring animations. So let's go ahead and use the animation wizard. This will give you an overview of the part animations that are available inside KeyShot. We can apply turntable to the top level model, to any top level model in your scene. We can apply translations. As you select the animation, it will give you a small preview at the bottom. So a turntable simply rotates your model around a center, which can be your model or your environment. Translation basically transforms it translates it in one direction, and rotation applies a rotation. And using fade, we can basically fade in, fade out the opacity of a part or a group of parts. We also have the ability to configure camera animations through the wizard, but this will be covered in next week's webinar. Today we'll be focusing on the turntables, on the part animations. So let's start off with turntable. As I click next in the animation wizard, I am presented with the selection dialog to select the model that I want to create a turntable for. It shows only the top level models in my scene tree. Let me hide my ground plane. Get some shadows that my model can sit on. So it by default shows the top level models. In this case I just have this Lego Technic mini tow truck model. As I click next, I am presented with an overview of the animation properties for this for the turntable animations. You also notice that at the bottom I get this blue bar. By default it's inserted at the current time marker, which is this vertical line. So I can click and drag this node inside the timeline. I will just drag it to the beginning of the animation. And we see we have some options here. The turntable is the simplest of animations, as it just applies a basically non-configurable rotation. So by default this is a 360-degree rotation. So as I play back the animation, but it's now looping, so if I turn off looping, you can see that it just spins the product around 360 degrees. I can select the center of rotation, which is by default is the model. So it takes the center of the entire model and then rotates it around the center. I can also select the environment, which means that if my object is offset from the environment center, it will have the turntable will have a different appearance. In this case, my animation, my object is centered in the environment. But if I select my object and use the move tool to move it out of the environment center, and with the environment selected, if I now play back the turntable animation, you can see that it looks different than before, because now my model is offset from the environment center. So let's take this back to the original position. You can also select the direction, clockwise, counterclockwise, and then at the bottom we have the time settings where we control the start, end, and duration times. By default for the turntable animations, this is a 5-second animation, so you see this 00.00.000. What this is minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. Furthermore, we can select the motion easing, which is going to be the smoothness in how the animation is played back. So there's a drop down. By default this is linear, which means that the speed is constant over the duration of the animation. As you hover over the first option, you get a small preview with a cube. The next option is ease in, where the acceleration increases over the duration. Then we have ease out, where the acceleration decreases until it stops. And then we have ease in, ease out, which is basically an acceleration and a deceleration at respectively the beginning and the end of the animation. I always recommend for most natural results to use the ease in and ease out option. So it starts slowly, spins up, and then it slows down again. A handy trick for manipulating these manual time inputs is to click on, for instance, the second section, and then use your arrow keys up and down to increase or decrease the length of these animations. So if you want this animation to start at 1 second, you can press in the second section, and hit the up key, the up arrow, and now your animation starts at the 1st second, and it retains the duration, and it updates the end time at the same time. So yeah, so as we accept this animation, we have now created our first turntable. Again, this is presented as this animation node. So one other important thing to note about KeyShot animations is that it is animation object or node based. It is not using keyframes. This is because the animation system is really optimized for fast creations of product exploded views and such. So it's very easy and fast to create simple product animations. But we can, if we click this blue animation bar, we get the animation, the properties of this animation on the right hand side. And these are the same options as we have in the animation wizard. So we can change the settings here after we've created them as well. Instead of manually editing the times, we can also hover over with our mouse the ends of these animation bars and click and drag them. If we do that, we can adjust the time this way. There's also this pop-up where you get feedback about the exact timing of your changes, basically. Also, in the beginning, you can enable, disable animations. If we right-click an animation, we can add it to a folder. We can duplicate, mirror, lock animations so they cannot be adjusted anymore. If you lock an animation, all the animation properties are grayed out and cannot be edited anymore. If we want to have editing capability back, we need to right-click the animation node again and select Unlock. We can also rename animations through the right-click menu or here in this name header for the animation. So if we call this Turntable, then it updates in both places. We can also rename folders. Folders, of course, can be collapsed and expanded, and also folders can be dragged. If folders are dragged, all contained animations get dragged along. If you scale folders, then all contained animations are scaled proportionately. So now let's get rid of this animation and let's try to recreate the one that I showed earlier. So I created this camera, and what I want to do is create a translation for this truck so that it comes driving into the scene, and then I want the wheels to spin at the same time. So a good approach to do this is to set up an initial animation that will sort of pull this truck out of screen. So I can use the animation wizard to apply the translation to the truck, but I can also right-click the truck inside the scene tree, and this gives me a context menu where I can select animation, then translation, and this gives me the translation node in the timeline. You can now see by default that it is a very small translation, and this is because it is set to a value of 1 in Y, which is the default, and my scene is set to millimeters. So it is now being translated 1 millimeter in the Y direction. Actually, I need to change the value, and I will change it to minus 200 millimeters in the Z direction. And actually, I did the calculation beforehand. I want the wheels to spin 3 times, and given the diameter of the wheels, this is going to enter this minus 286.5. So as we scroll through the timeline, which can be done by clicking and dragging in this time marker bar, if we do that, we basically scroll through the animations. Furthermore, for the translation itself, we can pick a axis orientation. You have the option for global, which is going to use the scene orientation, or you can pick original local, which is going to use the orientation used inside the modeling software. In this case, my original local matches global because I have used SolidWorks, but this could be different for different modeling softwares. A good trick to know the orientation of your axis is to hit the Z key. It can also be invoked by checking Show Coordinate Legend. This will give you this little triad in the bottom left corner where you can see your X, Y, and Z direction for your KeyShot scene, and these are the global directions. And you see that I need to have the Z direction. I will adjust. No, I will leave this animation like it is. And now my animation, my car is off screen, and now I need to re-enter it into the scene. So I will right-click this animation and pick Mirror. What this does is create a mirrored copy of the first animation. So instead of having a translation in minus, it now go the same value in the plus direction. So now my truck comes driving in. I will adjust the length of this animation to be 2 seconds, like this. At the same time as my car comes driving in, I also want my wheels to rotate. So I can let me first adjust the time settings and set this to ease in, ease out, so I get a little bit smoother motion. And now I want my wheels to rotate as well. So I will try and locate the wheels in my scene. I can simply click on my geometry, and here is the wheel group. So this is the wheel as well as the rim, the tire as well as the rim. I can right-click this one and set and select rotation. I will drag the animation to fit with my translation, and to find the good to set the correct settings for my rotation, I'm going to disable and check my rotation. So now I'm only previewing the rotation animation. For this distance, my wheels need to spin 3 times. So that's 360 degrees times 3. And if you enter, then KeyShot will do the math for you and give you the exact amount of degrees for 3 rotations. So let's see, or at least it should. Not sure why this doesn't work. So I have the wheel. Oh, it does actually work, but it's just too fast to notice. So it's a good idea to maybe try a smaller value. So now the orientation is correct, again as before, because my axis orientation is the same for my model as my KeyShot scene. In this case it doesn't matter if I pick original or global. I will again set this motion to ease in, ease out. I can collapse these settings, and in this case I want it to center around the origin. Another good idea to preview animations is to open the geometry view. So if I hit the O key, I am presented with the geometry view, which is a fast representation of my KeyShot scene. And I can, if I scroll in this view, in the timeline, my animation is updated in the geometry view as well. So this works for all part animations. The only animation that is not previewed in a geometry view is the fade animation, but we will apply a fade animation in a few moments. So for now I will hide the geometry view by hitting the O key again and start setting up this rotation. So I want this to pivot around the origin of my wheel group. So I click for the pivot point. I select origin. You have the option for center or origin. Center is going to pick the center of the bounding box of your object, whilst the origin is going to look for the actual origin as you set it up in your CAD software as well. In this case, I want all wheels to rotate, and as they all are instances of the same wheel, I can go to my I can select my rotation animation, which will highlight the animation in the scene tree as well. Here I can right-click the animation and I can copy, then click another wheel, right-click on the group, go to animation and paste an animation. I have the option to paste an animation, which will make an additional copy of the original rotation, but I can also paste a linked animation. If I do a paste linked animation, I don't get an additional animation node, but the same animation, the same wheel rotation 1 animation is now applied to both wheels. So as I scroll through the timeline, you can now see that both wheels are rotating. I can do this for, let me check, yeah, I can do this for the other wheels as well. So I can right-click animation, paste linked animation, the other wheel, paste linked animation. So let's change my camera back, play back the animation like this. I also need my my axis to rotate along, so I can select these parts, paste and link it, paste and link this axis at the back, paste a link. There's also these Lego end pieces attached on the axis. So you notice, as I'm not quite finished with the animation, that there is some, it's not fitting as it should, so I need to animate this one as well. I can simply copy and paste the same animation, paste link, I should say, on all these different parts. So the same animation is now being used for all these different parts. So another handy tool to check what geometry is being used for your animations is to right-click on an animation in the timeline and choose Select Groups Parts by Animation. If I do this, you get a highlight in the scene tree as well as in real time of all parts that have the animation applied. So that's a handy trick to know, yeah, where your animation, for which parts your animation is being used. So car comes driving in, comes to a halt. Now I want to use the fade feature to start fading out some geometry. I will select these first two animations, add them to a folder, truck driving in. Now I have this folder, and let's say I want to fade out this cabin first, so I will locate the cabin right here. I can right-click the cabin, animation, fade. By default, this adds this green fade animation node, which is going to fade from 100% to 0% visibility. I will again change the easing to ease in, ease out. If I now scrub through the timeline, you can see that the opacity of my entire group is animated from 100% opaque to 100% transparent. If I don't want entire transparency, I can change the fade to value. If I want 25%, then I can enter that value. So this is a nice way of, for instance, for technical presentations, to fade out geometry or to show inner pieces of geometry. In this case, I'm going to animate it to 0%. Next, I'm not going to create a linked animation. I'm going to create a distinct animation, fade animation for this crane. So I will do the same thing. I will fade, and it adds a new fade animation at the current time. So it's positioned exactly after the first one. This is a good time to start mentioning the zoom options. Here in the timeline, we have this zoom control, so we can zoom out, zoom in the timeline. You'll notice as you zoom that it zooms at the current time marker. So if I change my time, it changes the zooming location. I can also drag the slider to zoom. Another trick that you could use to zoom is to hold Control and then use the scroll wheel on your mouse. As you scroll out, you zoom out. As you scroll in, you zoom in. That's a handy trick for quickly changing the scale, which could come in handy if you have a long animation timeline. So if I play this back by scrubbing the timeline, I fade out my cabin, then fade out my crane. Again, we'll put this to ease in, ease out. Now I will quickly do the same with the remaining parts. So I'm clicking the rear rail, fade out, ease in, ease out. I want this to apply to the other rail as well, so I'm going to copy and paste link it so that it shares the same animation and is synchronized for both assemblies. And then finally I'm going to do the same for this chassis. And I'm going to create a fade animation. Again, zoom out a little. And like this. And now we've exposed the inners, basically the wheel and drive assembly of this truck without deleting parts, without manually hiding them, just applying these fade animations. So fade animations can be a great help in visualizing the inner workings of a product. Like before, I'm going to shift select these animations, the fade animations, put them into a folder. We'll call this fade out. So now these are added into a folder. And you'll notice as I have multiple differently timed animations into a folder, if I now increase or decrease the length of a folder, all animation lengths are scaled proportionately, so their relative timings are maintained. It's just that the total duration is changed. Now, one animation that we haven't touched on yet is the rotation animation. So, in this case, I want to rotate the front wheel assembly. So I want these wheels to turn to one side and then to the other, and at the same time make it so that the mechanics of this system are clear. So I will start by animating this front wheel axle assembly, and again I took the proper preparations in ensuring that my rotation center coincides with the origin of my CAD model. Again, it's a good practice to do that because it will make your life in KeyShot easier if you're trying to configure rotation animations. A good trick to find out the origins of your models is to, again, open the geometry view, and as you select a group or a piece of geometry, you see a visualization of its origin. So you can see as I select this group that I have this dotted line and as well a red dot in the middle in the origin of my group, basically. So this is the origin as well as the Y direction of the model. So this is a good way to know if you have imported your model in KeyShot where your origins and original Y up direction is located. So I do the same for my wheel. I see that my origin is here in the front of the wheel and my Y direction is up. If I do the same for the cabin, you can see that my origin is placed right in the center of this axle. So that's a good trick to know the origin of your models, which can come in handy if it comes to applying rotation animations. So I will start off by selecting this group, right-clicking and applying a rotation. This gives me a rotation animation. If I scrub through it, you notice that it not quite rotates in the right direction. So if I look at the settings, it's rotating by default around this axis, but I can switch it to Y. So now it rotates at least in the proper direction, but I want to rotate this wheel first to the right. So I will change the angle to -20, and actually this is the location of my origin which I want it to pivot around. So I will go to the pivot point section and switch the pivot point from center to origin. Now my animation, my rotation is applied correctly. So what's the difference between origin and center? Origin takes the original origin of your CAD model. Center basically lets KeyShot figure out the rotation center itself, and this is the center of the bounding box that is drawn around your geometry. So now this axle is rotated, and I will do the same trick of selecting the animation, copy, and pasting it onto this link it onto this wheel. So now both my axle and my wheel are rotated, but you will notice that now the wheel doesn't quite follow the axle. And this is because now both parts, even though the animation is linked, are now rotating around their own individual origins. What I want is that the wheel rotates around the origin of this axle assembly. To do this, both parts need to share the same pivot point, and this is to be controlled inside this pivot point picker. So if you have a look at the pivot point settings for the rotation animation, I can select the pivot point. By default this is self, so this means that for every piece of geometry that the rotation animation is applied to, it will rotate around its own origin. If I open the geometry view, and if I select both the front wheel and the axle, this one, and this one, and if I now scrub to the timeline, you will notice that they rotate around their origins when I want it in fact to rotate around this single origin. So I will click the animation settings again, click pick, and this presents me with a selection dialog for the pivot point, and I will select the group of this axle, click OK, and now both parts share the same pivot origin. And again, I will copy and paste it onto this tiny part here. Paste a linked animation, and I will repeat the same process for this part, animation rotation. I will make them same. Again, Y in -20 degrees for the other side. Put ease in, ease out. Pick again the pivot point, in this case the other side. Right click that animation and apply it to the wheel on the other side. Paste linked animation, do the same for this little knob. So now my basic wheel rotation is applied. Now I want this drive mechanism to be animated as well. So I will attach, I will first include this assembly, this steering crank assembly to the rotation of this of the left wheel. So I will right click, copy the animation, go to this group and apply it animation, paste linked animation like this. And now as it rotates, I also need to apply a rotation to this group on its own. So I will select, right click and apply a rotation. Again, I need to set it to the Y direction, 20 degrees, like this. And you'll notice that it behaves a little weird. And that is because, again, by default, this is rotating around its own center, which in this case is right here in the middle of this black pin. So I will again set it to origin, and I will also pick another object to pivot around, and in this case I wanted to pivot around this pin. So I click OK, and I now need to change my axes because by default, if I select another object, it sets the axis orientation to original local. So I can leave it at original local and pick a different axis, or I can pick global and set it to Y. And now you will notice that as I play back the animation, it's almost there, but there is a small offset here where this part doesn't quite follow the original pivot that I selected. And this is because as I apply, let me disable the new animation, as I apply this original rotation, the location of my pivot point shifts a little. So where it is by default located here, as I rotate, it shifts a tiny bit. So in order for my animation to resolve correctly, I need to click my latest one and enable dynamic pivot point. This will make sure that for the animation where I'm using a pivot point that is animated itself, that is being resolved correctly. So now you notice that my rotation is applied correctly. Again, I notice something weird is happening on this animation, and I need to switch it to origin. And now you notice that this is being resolved nicely, as it should. The last step here for this rotation is to go to the group here, apply a rotation on this part. Again, need to change the axis. Like this. Set it to origin. Apply the copy to this part. Paste linked. Again, you notice that there is a small offset because, again, by default, each part, even though it's both of these parts are using a single linked animation, they are rotating around their own origins. So I have to click the animation and set a common pivot point to be used for all parts. So I click pivot, I select this group, and now if I play back the animation, you will notice that it is in perfect sync, basically. now I can add these to a folder. Could be turn right, and now I can select this folder, right click, and I can mirror a folder. If I mirror a folder, I get this turn right mirror, where if I play it back, it turns my wheels the other way around. So yeah, I think this is a good overview of the part animation features we have in KeyShot 6. Seems like we are slowly running out of time. I think this would be a good point to start going into some questions, if there are any.
Hey Dries, thank you for that. I think there were some issues with the playback quality. Can you just slowly kind of scrub through the timeline to show the animation, and then
Okay.
if it would be possible, I think it would be very appreciated if we can upload this scene to the
Yeah.
GrabCAD page with all the animation in there along with the modified SolidWorks file.
Yeah, definitely. That was actually on my to-do list for tomorrow. So I will make this available, yeah, for anyone to pick around and view the exact setup. Yeah, definitely. You really want to use the adapted SolidWorks model for this animation.
Okay, I just posted a link to that GrabCAD page in the chat log there, so the attendees can take a look at that page in an hour or so. Give Dries some time to upload it there.
One thing I just noticed I didn't mention is for the real time is the work area. So you'll notice I did a small setup animation in the beginning where I pulled it out of the screen. If you don't want that included in your uh, playback, there are these little flags in the beginning and the end which define your work area. So there's one at the end and there's one at the beginning. If I drag this one, you see you get a hatched preview in front of it. So if I drag this to the start of my actual beginning, if I now hit playback, it starts from that work area marker.